Welcome to InterPartyConflict, the podcast where we answer your questions so you can have the best tabletop gaming experience possible. My name is Gabe.
And my name is Pizza.
Wait.
Dang it. Sorry, my name is Jeff.
Are you sure you're not Pizza?
I was just thinking
Because
I was thinking about
expecting pizza.
Gabe has a coupon for pizza on his desk, and I was thinking about pizza. Now I'm dropping things.
Jeff, don't stop it, Jeff. Do we need to start this recording over?
No, we're keeping this in. Everything goes.
Yes, and that's not just a pizza coupon. That's a Mr. Pizza coupon.
Oh,
it's
Mr.
a very,
Pizza.
very delicious pizza place right around the corner from where I live. But this is not the Pizza Cast. This is, as I said, InterPartyConflict, and your name is not Pizza.
It's Jeff, but
Jeff.
There's got to be podcasts about pizza.
Oh, I'm sure there is.
What's the deal with everyone hating on anchovies? That's what I want to know.
It's because it's anchovies, Jeff.
They're delicious. They're salty and oily. That's what pizza is. It's oil and salt.
Now, to be fair, I said that having never actually tasted anchovies before.
You should probably give it a try.
Also, sardines. I've never had sardines before.
I must have had sardines before. Yeah. I've had sardines on like crackers or something like that. I don't know. I like seafood a lot more than most people do.
See, I don't like seafood at all. Pretty much any kind of seafood. Like, I'll eat fish sticks because they are in no way like an actual fish.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, when you get to like fish sandwiches at like fast food restaurants and stuff like that, it's cod, and that's pretty, as far as fish go, like bland.
Yeah.
Like they don't have like the fishy taste.
Sure.
There's another type of fish. I forget what it's called. Sometimes it's named like the Maui or something like that.
It's not like orange roughy, is it?
I can't remember.
My parents used to always have that when I was a kid.
But it's one that like if it's like it tastes like chicken. Like there's a few seafood things that you can get that don't taste like seafood. They don't taste like the ocean.
I've heard that swordfish is pretty good in that regard.
I don't know if I've had swordfish.
I mean, obviously, I've never had it. But,
I've had a lot of salmon. My uncle lives in Alaska and would fish salmon and send us like a little like frozen salmon.
Look at me. My name's Jeff. I have relatives. So do I. I don't know where that came from.
All right. Next time on the Fish Cast.
Yes. So how are you doing today, Jeff?
I'm all right. I've been having back issues.
Oh, I'm sorry to hear that.
It's just work. Work involves me sitting in a car, or like a van or a truck all day, and then like anytime I stop, I have to like haul stuff out of it and everything.
Yeah.
So like I'm lifting, and I'm at a warehouse otherwise, and then I come home and sit on a computer all day. So my back's not loving me right now. And
yeah,
I had to take the day off.
That sucks.
Yeah.
I used to always have back problems. I had feet problems for a long time because I was on my feet all the time at work. So
right.
I had plantar fasciitis. I eventually, a combination of, I got really good shoes. I got like these like super expensive shoes that one pair lasted me 5 years on this one pair of shoes, and they cost like $200 or $300. And then when those wore out, I went and got another pair because I mean, what else am I going to do? They're that good.
Is that the coil ones or
no? These ones they're called SAS brand, SAS.
SAS brand.
But they're really good. I don't know.
Well, I mean, yeah, like shoes are one of those things that you should spend good money on just because you're
going to be using them every day.
Yeah. Like humans only very recently started walking on 2 feet, in the grand scheme of things.
Right,
We're not really good at it, so we have to, get something.
Now hang on a minute, but there's that old saying that goes, humans walk on 4 legs in the morning and then 2 legs in the afternoon and then 3 legs in the evening. So like it only takes 4 hours, 6 hours? Come on, Jeff, what the heck?
Oh jeez.
So I had like foot issues, and then I've always had back issues for a while at least. If I ever sleep longer than like 7 or 8 hours, my back is killing me.
Yeah.
I was working as a certified nursing assistant in Tennessee for a couple of years, and there was a time when I was helping a patient stand up, and I knew when it happened that I did something wrong, although I didn't actually feel it for a couple of days. I did something with my back, and my mom, who was my doctor at the time, she diagnosed me with having a herniated disc.
Oh yeah.
And so, I mean, there isn't really much that you can do aside from like surgery with that. So I just took a ton of ibuprofen every day, and that pretty much has gone away. I mean, every now and then my back will hurt a little bit, and if I'm ever like driving for a really long time, I guess that hurts too.
Yeah,
but
getting old.
Yeah. Anyway, so now that we finished our weekly pizza discussion, weekly fish discussion, and our weekly health corner,
right? Yeah, everyone's favorite segments.
Yeah. So on my side, Christmas is coming up in a couple weeks.
Mm-hmm.
As of this recording, it's in a couple weeks.
Yeah,
I still haven't done any of my Christmas shopping.
As of this recording, we're only a few days away from the new Star Wars movie.
That's true. That's true. And actually, I just noticed a little while ago, the movie The Disaster Artist is coming out soon. If we finish this recording early enough, I think I might grab Lisa and run out to the movie theater to watch it.
Oh man. Yeah. I've been seeing a lot about that. And
Yeah. Anybody who has not seen the movie The Room.
Oh my goodness.
You should watch the movie The Room. It is very good, asterisk.
It is so. Watch videos about the movie The Room.
I suppose, yeah. You can get the experience of watching The Room in about 10 minutes.
I could not put myself through the whole thing, but I appreciate it for what it is.
It's pretty good. My wife Lisa owns one of the dresses that is in the movie.
Oh, right.
Because the woman that played the character of Lisa was selling a bunch of her stuff, and that dress was just something that she had. They told her to bring in her own clothes.
They're tearing me apart, Lisa.
Do you wanna do that one over, Jeff?
I don't know it well enough.
Okay, that's fine. That's fine. That will be a teaser for anybody who wants to go out and watch The Room. Anyway, you want to go ahead and get into the episode?
Yeah, let's do that.
All right. Now that we've talked about pizza, fish, back problems, and movies.
All right. Good.
All right.
What's this podcast about anyway?
I don't even know.
Okay.
Something about dragons?
Yeah, that's good. How about that?
Okay. All right, Jeff. I want you to imagine that you and Skylar, your fiance, you guys are getting dressed up all nice and fancy. You hop in the car. You drive to your destination. There's a bunch of people waiting outside to get in. You wait in line. You buy your ticket. You get inside. You sit down. The lights go dim.
Oh.
And then the projector starts up, and you see now your feature presentation. The Dragon's Hoard.
I've been waiting for this movie. Shh.
Oh, sorry. All right. Our Dragon's Hoard item today is an RPG Superstar item from Paizo.com.
Cool.
And this one, I was actually going to bring this one in on an episode a while ago, and for some reason I didn't. I think we had something better that week. But the item that I have today is called the Quicksand Cloak.
Ooh.
So this is this is a Paizo.com RPG Superstar item. RPG Superstar is a contest that they used to do. I don't think they've done one in a couple of years, but it's a little contest where they're trying to find new writers for Paizo's, Pathfinder role-playing game.
Sure.
So the open call round of the contest is you make a magic item, and then if you pass that, you make like an NPC or something, and so on and so on.
Gotcha.
Anyway, so this is one of the winners. This one, I think, was created by one of the winners. His name is Stephen Helt. And anyway, so the Quicksand Cloak. It's a really cool item. This long, mottled brown cloak seems heavy and feels damp to the touch. The exterior of the cloak disguises an extra-dimensional space filled with water, dirt, and debris, resembling natural quicksand. Each time a creature of the wearer's size or smaller attempts to grapple the wearer, it must succeed at a DC 15 reflex save or be engulfed by quicksand.
Whoa.
In lieu of the grapple attempt and every round trapped in the cloak's extra-dimensional space, the trapped creature must make a swim check, DC 15 plus 1 for each consecutive failed swim check, to climb out of the cloak, landing prone in a square adjacent to the wearer. Crawling out of the cloak provokes an attack of opportunity from the wearer. A creature that fails a swim check by 5 or more submerges and begins to drown.
Whoa.
And here's quite possibly my favorite part of this. A quicksand cloak left on the ground with no wearer behaves as a patch of quicksand filling 2 5-foot squares. Creatures trapped in the cloak can attempt to swim out of it whether the cloak is worn or not. Though the quicksand may contain debris or decayed bits of drowned victims, without increasing its weight, of course, a quicksand cloak of any size only has enough room to trap one creature at a time. If a creature dies and is not pulled out of the cloak, the body becomes a part of the cloak's debris and remains until removed.
Dang.
Yes.
Whoa.
Yes.
This thing is awesome.
Yes, it is.
And I kind of I like that you could place it on the ground because it makes me think of when it's like raining or something and there's like a puddle in the sidewalk and somebody's trying to cross it. Like you like lay down your coat to let a lady cross over it, but then you're like, wait, crap. Like,
Yes.
Not that coat.
You know, I thought up a joke a long time ago, but I never really knew how to quite word it. So I'm going to try it here. Okay, so a man is standing with his wife on a street corner, and then there's an attractive woman that walks up, and she's about to cross the road, and the man says, pardon me, and he lays his coat down on a puddle, and then she walks across it, and then as she walks across it, she says to the man, thank you so much, that was so nice of you, and the man says, oh no, that's my wife's coat. I'll be here for the next 56 minutes.
Sure.
Maybe when we're done recording, I'll go back and I'll replace that number with the number of minutes left of the episode.
53. So this thing is ridiculous, and if somebody dies in there, they just stay part of it.
Yes.
Now, think of a like necromancer or something who has this cloak and just like has this supply of like dead people in his like.
Yeah.
Well, I wonder if there's some easy way to get things out of there. Probably not.
You just stick a pole in there with
Yeah.
a hook on the end.
But I mean, in any case, like, let's see, it can only hold one creature at a time.
Yeah.
Man, it would be great if it could hold at least two, because then you can have an undead.
Yes, exactly.
An undead like thrall in there
that's
who is
awesome.
also pulling them down and attacking them.
Yeah.
Man.
Or even, heck, I love the idea of just an extra dimensional cloak.
Right, yeah, absolutely.
Where you've just got a necromancer could have skeletons in his cloak.
Right, yeah.
That just climb out.
Or you just start like tossing junk in there, you know,
Yes.
like you're just like, I don't need this anymore. You just make it part of the debris.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure when I was playing as Ichi, I'm pretty sure that Ichi had bags of holding sewn into his cloak, so that he just had a cloak and he could just like pull out. You know, thematically it was the same. It was different than just having bags of holding, but mechanically it was the same.
I like this, but maybe like a junk pile theme.
Yeah.
Where it's or it'd be kind of like a cloak of many pockets or whatever it's called. Or
Okay. The robe of useful items.
Is that it?
Yeah.
It's got like patches on it. That's what I'm thinking.
Yeah, you tear off the patches and they each become whatever.
But it'd be like this extra dimensional space that's just like a junkyard basically, and like you can like drown in the junk or something like that. It's similar mechanics. But no, this is a really cool item. I like it. It's terrifying actually.
Yeah.
You get consumed by quicksand.
I really like it because it's a good defense against being grappled.
Yeah, for sure.
I feel like that's not something that you see very often.
Right, yeah. The best defense of getting grappled is to
just be strong and be good at
grappling. In which case, like, wouldn't you be the one grappling, and people would be less likely to grapple you? I don't know. Yeah, exactly. Like, there's not a whole lot of good defenses against grappling.
Yeah.
Other than being good at grappling.
Right. Yeah, I love this item. I think it's so cool. I mean, it's pretty powerful. I couldn't really see myself putting it into a campaign without the players being a fairly high level, but man, it's just so cool.
Yeah, that's pretty cool.
Man.
That's so insane. They're like, there's a guy drowning in my cloak right now.
Yeah.
Like,
he's got about a minute left.
He's fine.
Yep. Now, let me ask you a question, Jeff. When you were growing up, watching let's just say most television, did you get the impression that quicksand would be a bigger concern than it actually is?
That's not a John Mulaney joke.
Probably. I did in fact get that from somewhere else.
Yeah, I thought quicksand was going to be a much bigger problem than it was. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, like cartoons set you up for those sort of like, you know, like anvils and pianos falling from the sky and quicksand and like full sticks of dynamite. That whole
Yeah.
thing.
I'm pretty sure there was an episode of Briscoe County Jr. That's a call out to anybody who has ever heard of The Adventures of Briscoe County Jr., which is about 12 people in the world. But
Not including... never mind.
Not including Briscoe County Jr.
Yeah.
No, it was a Western / sci-fi action comedy from the 90s starring Bruce Campbell. It only had one season. It was actually a pretty cool show. But anyway, I'm pretty sure an episode of that revolved around quicksand in some way or another. For anybody out there who ever has the misfortune of encountering quicksand, just a tip. The way you survive quicksand is not to struggle, of course. Try to make yourself have as much surface area as possible. So like if you're starting to go down, try laying sideways. And if possible, roll your way out of there, because the wider you are, the more pressure you'll be able to put on it without just going straight in.
Right,
So
yeah.
that's our little life pro tip for
Sure.
people out there. Let's put some sort of a good sound here. Okay, I think that'll do it for the Dragon's Horde today.
What show is this?
I don't know. What's wrong with us today, Jeff?
Nothing.
I think there's a carbon monoxide leak in this room. I apologize, everybody.
No, we're being snowed in.
Yeah, this would actually belong earlier in the episode. But yeah, today is like the first real snow we've had here in Michigan,
Or at least
of the season.
At least this region of Michigan.
I
think
guess, yeah.
The west side got pretty bad the other day.
Oh. Yeah, so if anybody wanted to submit magic items for the Dragon's Horde, or questions for us to discuss, or stories for the funeral pyre, how would they do so?
They can send us an email at interpartyconflict@gmail.com, or they could check out our Reddit at Reddit.r/interpartyconflict.
Yes. Yeah. And also, I'll take a moment and tell everybody about FriendQuest. FriendQuest is our YouTube channel.
Yeah.
I have a couple possible episodes of that to get to you before you leave today, Jeff.
Sure, yeah.
Remind me, because I think I was supposed to give them to you last week and I didn't.
That's fine.
Yeah, so check out youtube.com, type in FriendQuest, Tower of Doom.
Yeah, I think that'd be the easiest way to find it, because Tower of Doom playthroughs, there's not like a ton of them. So,
Sure.
But FriendQuest and Tower of Doom, that should bring you to it.
And I want to direct our listeners to go and check out the other podcasts on the Crit Nation Fellowship. So check out critacademy.com. Those guys create new and reusable content for players and DMs alike. You can also check out D&D Character Lab, where they make characters and then kind of pit them against each other. All right, you want to get into some questions?
All right, this first question comes from Fingers Fate on Facebook. He asks, my battlefields are either very boring or too big. Can you recommend ways or rules of thumb on making my combat encounter maps better? How many squares, terrain, distance, hazards, etc. make for a good encounter?
Yeah, this is a good question, because it's definitely possible for a battlefield to be too big.
Right.
It's also possible for it to be too small, I guess. It's very common for battlefields to actually be very lackluster, to be perfectly honest.
Sure.
So yeah, like what is a good rule of thumb for making, making encounters with stuff that the players can actually engage in?
Right, yeah. Well, and this is something that kind of it kind of fights with like the whether you're using a battle mat or whether you're doing like theater of the mind.
Definitely.
If you're using theater of the mind, like the more descriptive you are, the better your battlefield is, because your players have more to work with.
Yeah.
If you're using like battle mats and miniatures and stuff like that, like, the more detailed you can get with those, the better. The more, but that involves you having more miniatures and stuff like that.
Right.
Or just drawing stuff on the mat, that sort of thing.
Yeah.
But yeah, you don't want it to be too big and open unless it's tactically supposed to be that way, because big open fields means you're a target for ranged attacks and stuff like that.
Right.
But this question makes me think of games like video games like XCOM. Mm-hmm. Or cover shooters, games that like deal a lot with like cover and stuff like that. The cover mechanics in D&D are fairly simple. There's usually like partial cover or full cover, things like that. That just give you like depending on the edition, either give you like disadvantage against you or something like that,
or like a bonus to your AC.
I think
the AC of the target.
Right. Yeah. So yeah, working with those, because I feel like we don't really use that too often.
Yeah, not as often as I should.
Yeah. So I mean, like having more ways to use those mechanics, because that's a whole set of mechanics that, like, you know, not everybody takes advantage of, and it could add some, you know, it could add something to the battle.
Yeah.
So like having rough terrain, you know, places to hide behind, you know, pitfalls and things like that. Just, you know, you don't want it to be too cluttered, I guess.
Yeah.
But you want it, I don't know, something that you can have the, you know, the enemies take advantage of, and something that the players could potentially take advantage of.
Yeah. Yeah. The important thing is that if you do put in something like difficult terrain, have the enemies take advantage of it.
Right.
If the enemies aren't taking advantage of the terrain and the environment, the players are going to be less likely to do it too.
Sure.
But if the players walk into a room and all the enemies are hiding behind tables, and there are also tables the players can hide behind, the players are probably going to do it too. Whereas if there's tables but nobody's using them, nobody's going to use them.
Right.
You know.
So yeah, like, yeah, lead by example that way. So
yeah.
So if you want your battlefields to be more, you know, to have more to them, make sure that you're using them as well, as much as you want the players to be using them.
Sure. As far as if I had to say a good rule of thumb for like combat encounter size, or like battlefield size, I would have to say don't ever have, I mean, first off, don't have a combat start really, really, really far away. You know, I'll get into what I mean really, really, really far away is in a minute. But like, if you have an encounter where everybody is going to have to spend 2 rounds moving first,
yeah,
then don't start that far away.
Sure. Yeah.
I mean, like, if you want there to be surprise, then I guess, sure, tell your players, okay, you see them, but they don't see you. You've got to move this far, so make this many sneak checks or whatever. I guess you can do that.
Yeah.
But once both sides know about each other, unless one side has a way to affect the other, just skip that part.
Mm-hmm.
Just have the fight start when everybody is closer. And let's say one side does have a way to affect the others. For example, I think in our feats episode, we talked about there's this one combo where people with a warlock in 5th edition, a warlock with the spell sniper feat and the Eldritch Spear invocation, can theoretically shoot an Eldritch Blast like, 800 feet?
Something crazy, yeah.
And that's pretty cool, but you shouldn't ever be having an encounter that is that far away.
Yeah. I mean, you could potentially, like, because that's kind of a neat idea where it's a very long, say it's like a long street in like a city or a village or something like that. And there is a warlock sniper literally in a tower or something.
Sure.
And like, you got to make your way down that village, maybe fighting other things too, while taking attacks from that warlock.
And that's actually a really cool idea.
Yeah. So like and then like you're using cover to, like, you're trying to make sure that you're in cover most of the time while also fighting other things on the ground and getting closer and closer to the warlock so that you can stop him.
Yeah, in that case, the combat is less about fighting the warlock.
Yeah.
It's more about fighting or doing whatever you have to do on the way to the warlock.
Yeah.
So that's a kind of a cool dynamic encounter. If the encounter is supposed to be just kind of your side against their side, then, you know, it's not very fun to have an encounter where one side, where both sides are just so far away from each other.
Yeah, if this is like a random encounter, like try to set it up nice and neat so that it's gonna, you know, it'll move quick enough.
Yeah,
because, like, you know, if you do stuff like random encounters where you roll for random encounters, you don't want those. You want to have those kind of somewhat set up ahead of time,
right?
And you don't want them to take up too much of your time because, like, you know, you got role playing and plot stuff to get to.
Mm-hmm. So if I had to give a rule of thumb for like how big to make a battlefield,
sure,
I would say the upper limit should probably be whatever the average party's movement speed is times 1.5. I would say that's probably a good rule of thumb, because that way, if a player wants to like move and cast a spell or move and shoot a bow or something, they have to move one round and like move and attack one round. And then the following round, they can get to the enemies and attack them in melee.
Mm.
Or they can, use a dash action or whatever to get to the enemies in one round, but that's all they can do.
Right, yeah.
Probably the worst thing you can do is to make a player have to spend 2 whole rounds only just moving.
Yeah.
That does not sound fun.
Really doesn't, no.
Yeah. So whatever the party movement speed is, times 1.5 is probably a good, maybe not an upper limit, but that's probably, that's you shouldn't have it much more than that unless you have a good reason for it. Unless you have something to keep those rounds still interesting while the players are moving.
Mm-hmm.
As far as hazards and terrain and stuff like that, I don't know. I don't think that having the battlefield be too cluttered is really a huge problem. I say maybe kind of throw in all the stuff you want, and if you think it is a problem, then just don't do that again. Maybe next time scale it back a little bit. Remove one of the hazards and see if it still feels too cluttered. I think that if you are able to build one battlefield that is good and interesting, find ways to reuse that same battlefield. Maybe, have one of those hazards be a similar hazard differently. I kind of joked a couple episodes ago about oh, it's another encounter with the waterfall and the 2 trees. That was a very extreme example, but if you were to have a cool encounter where there is a cliff up above where there can be someone firing down and there's some stuff down at the bottom where there's cover, find ways to reskin each of those things so that it makes sense for wherever you are. Mm. Not necessarily exactly, because again, you don't want to have all of your encounters feel like you're just reusing the same assets.
Sure, yeah.
But if you find something that works, maybe have one encounter where there's enemies up on a cliff and then there's stuff the players can hide behind below. Maybe have another encounter, the players are on the cliff, the enemies are down below. Maybe have another one where there's enemies up above and enemies down below. Maybe they're working together to try and help. Maybe the players stumble across 2 different groups of enemies that are fighting each other. The players have to help the ones that are up top.
Right.
So maybe they have to climb up while the battle's going on or something like that. So, don't overuse it too much, but if you find a good set of challenges, try to find ways to make that, that set interesting as many times as you can.
Yeah. Although, you don't want to go, you definitely don't want to go too overboard, because like with the amount of spaces, you don't want to have a player spend, several rounds climbing a cliff.
Good point.
Something like that. But, you always want to keep battles quick and snappy as you can,
Yeah. Anytime a player is forced to not attack or not cast a spell or not do anything quote unquote fun for a round is probably not a good way to do it. Try not to have anything take more than 1 round to do.
Sure.
Just as a rule of thumb. There's going to be there's going to be exceptions. Yeah. There's going to be times where, maybe this would work. You don't want everything to always be the same level of fun, but, just as a rule of thumb, try to remember that your players are playing the game because they want to have fun. And it's more fun to roll dice and it's more fun to succeed at things than it is to say, okay, I'm going to keep moving. Yeah. Your turn.
Yeah. It's I climb 30 more feet.
Right. Back in my 4th edition days when I would just run encounters, I've talked about that plenty of times, but I did kind of do a thing where one day I just kind of sat down on my battle mat and I drew out a little, maybe 40 or 50 foot room. It was like a weird circle. And then I put, okay, here's an area that is 10 feet above the rest. Here's a pit. And then here's a hallway coming in, a hallway going out. And then I drew just a couple other, a pillar here and a pillar there. Yeah. And then whenever I would run encounters, I would have the players be in that same battlefield because, it had stuff everybody can use. But each time we would run an encounter, the players would be entering from a different spot. And then the enemies would be entering from a different spot. Sometimes they would be coming in from this hallway. The enemies would be coming in from that hallway. And then the pit was like a spiked pit. So they could push enemies in. Another time, the players came out of the pit. They were climbing up from below. And then the enemies were up on, the ledge or whatever. And so I kind of tried to do what I was just describing, where I did try to make one interesting battlefield, and then I just kind of kept reusing that.
Right, yeah.
Now, of course, if you're running a full campaign, it's going to be a lot of work to try and keep reflavoring that same battlefield. So
not impossible.
Not impossible.
They might be coming back to the same spot for a reason.
Right. But you can at least use it as a way to get your mind into the way of thinking of this, of seeing whether this type of encounter works. See if having the tall ledge works. Yeah. If nobody likes the tall ledge or like nobody uses it, maybe don't use that in future encounters. If everybody likes there being a pit, try putting more pits in your future battlefields.
More pits.
Yes. Now, when you're using a battle mat, I think that an important thing to remember is that spacing and tactical movement can be a huge annoyance, for better and for worse. In the first 4th edition campaign I ever played in, when I was playing as my character Artemis Redsleeves, there was an encounter we did very early on where I'll do my best to paint a word picture of what this battlefield looked like. Mm-hmm. We were going down a hallway, a 10 foot wide hallway. So two people in battle could stand next to each other. There was a 10 foot by 10 foot pit. So like there was a pit. On the opposite end of the pit, there was a 10 foot by 5 foot ledge. So a ledge that 2 characters could stand on comfortably in battle. Mm-hmm. Everybody else had to be on the other side of the pit. Just past that ledge was a 5 foot wide door. Mm-hmm. And past that door was a room full of orcs. Uh-huh. So what ended up happening was in combat, one person was able to stand in front of the door. One person was able to stand next to them by the door. So 2 melee people were able to attack the one orc that was in the doorway. Everybody else had to be on the other side of this pit.
Oh, yeah.
Every time we would kill an orc, another orc would just scoot right in and take its place.
Sure.
And so, I mean, eventually one of us was able to scoot into that square before them. So eventually we were able to we were able to sort of make our way in there. But the fact that it was such a narrow door and so few people were even able to get to the door and everybody else had to be on the other side of a pit led to so much frustration in this battle. And I say that in a good way, because what would have been an easy encounter, it's just, we just shoot a bunch of orcs, the melee guys just go in, cleave a bunch of orcs or whatever.
Yeah.
That would have been really easy if we could just walk up and attack them. But we couldn't. We had to be aware of who was at the doorway, mm-hmm. who was able to kill the orc. If we killed the orc and one of us had an opportunity to get into that space, did we want to? Because if so, that one character was then going to be surrounded by orcs.
Sure, yeah.
And then if one person's in the doorway, nobody behind the doorway can attack in melee because now they're behind the person that's in the doorway. I hope this is making sense.
Yeah.
It was such a frustrating encounter, but it turned what would have been a very lackluster encounter into one that, like, I still remember to this day because it was all about the placement, the spacing. It was all about knowing whose turn was coming up next, so that if you killed the person in the doorway, did you have something that you could use to get that person into the room so that they could kill another orc and move themselves further into the room?
Sure.
So even something as simple as just having a pit, a small ledge, and a doorway led to a very memorable encounter. Maybe the listeners out there might be saying, this sounds like a nightmare. This sounds like the worst encounter ever. If so, that's fine.
Right, yeah.
Maybe it would be for you guys. I don't know.
Yeah, because I could definitely see that being frustrating in a bad way, because it's like, it's a battle that would have been fairly easy, but now it's going to take like 5 times as long to get through, because you're only killing it one orc at a time and with like half as many players basically, because the other half can't do anything.
And so we did this encounter. We killed all the orcs. There were like some hags or something with that or whatever. We killed them too. And then about maybe 6 or 7 levels later, we had to go back to that same dungeon. And we had another encounter
in that same hall.
Oh. And that encounter was even worse.
Oh, jeez.
There was a point where the party's healer got knocked back into the pit. So my character, he was on the other side of the pit, but he got knocked unconscious by like an arrow or something. And my character, the fighter, tried running and jumping over the pit to go like give him a potion or something. and I failed the check, and I fell and took damage. Later on in the encounter, my character, Artemis Redsleeves, got killed. Exactly to the number. If I had not fallen into that pit, I would not have died.
Oh, jeez.
Yeah. Anyway, but yeah, so that encounter, it was so good we did it again. No, like it was it was really memorable because it was so difficult. And what I like about 4th edition is the battlefield placement, is all of that. And if you're asking about, how to make my combat encounter maps better, you're probably thinking about the placement. You might want to have an encounter that is meant to be very frustrating for the players. I mean, if you do it and they don't like it, maybe don't do it again.
Yeah.
But you might want to try it out and see how well you can make a small space into an enemy, so that it's not just that your players are fighting the orcs. Your players are fighting the battlefield.
Right, yeah. Yep.
Yeah, so just something to keep in mind. Try it out. If it doesn't work, don't ever do it again. I don't blame anybody for not liking something like that. But in a game like 4th edition, I think it can work. Because that's what that game is all about.
Yeah, that 4th edition definitely had a lot of like some of the classes had things where you can like move other people and things like that. So
yeah, absolutely.
That's 4th edition's pretty fun.
Yeah.
All right, another battle-related question. We got this from Nicholas P. This was on email, and he asks, what are some tips for running or making the final boss for the campaign?
Yes.
So, final boss battles.
Yeah, I've, a lot of campaigns, I think it's probably fair to say that a lot of campaigns don't make it to the final boss. Which,
sure.
A lot of campaigns fall apart for various reasons. We've talked about various reasons they might do so in the past.
Yeah.
And so a lot of people probably won't encounter a final boss, or DMs won't run for a final boss.
Right.
So when it happens, it's a special thing.
Yeah,
you want to make sure that a final boss is a memorable encounter.
Right.
I personally have played, I want to say, I've fought what I would consider 4 separate final boss encounters as a player. And like I've run the Age of Worms. Ding. I think that was the only one that I've ever personally run. But that's one of the, I think the Age of Worms and then the Eberron one. Yeah.
I think we've
Jay's Eberron campaign was one of them. When I was playing as Ichi, we already did the Buong for that one, but I'll do it again. Buong. In that campaign, we fought what was, I would say, was the final boss of the campaign. We did play an adventure after that, but then we decided to just kind of let go and start a new campaign instead.
Yeah.
And then the campaign I was just talking about with Artemis Redsleeves, where he got killed and then he was brought back to life. We eventually fought what I would consider to be the final boss of that campaign. And no, maybe I was including the Age of Worms in that.
Sure.
So I guess 3.
Yeah.
And then I ran the Age of Worms, so I'll sort of try to talk about what I did for the Age of Worms. I mean, it was a pre-written adventure, but I had quite a hand in making the adventure more than it was, because you guys were fairly powerful when you got there, like more so than the adventure meant it to be. But the adventure kind of set it up pretty well. When you're running the final boss, of course you want the encounter to be difficult. You want the boss, NPC or monster, to be powerful. Not necessarily powerful enough to kill a player in one hit, because you don't want to have the fight go on and then have one player be out of the fight for the whole encounter because they got, hit by a lucky attack or whatever.
Yeah.
But you do want the boss to have a lot of hit points. You want the boss to be relatively hard to hit, but more importantly, you want the boss to have a lot of tricks at their disposal. You want them to have, if they're a spellcaster, you want them to have all sorts of spells they can cast. You might want to give them things that let them cast multiple spells. 5th edition does a really cool thing where they give important monsters what they call
it's like legendary
actions.
Yeah.
And lair actions.
Oh yeah, layer stuff. I forgot about that.
And the whole point of those is that especially in 5th edition, action economy is the whole game. Like that is what makes an encounter easy or difficult, is basically who gets more actions.
Right, yeah.
So a lot of DMs have probably run into the trap of having one really tough enemy and expecting it to be an exciting encounter.
Right.
And a lot of the time it's not. A lot of the time the players just steamroll that one enemy, no matter how many hit points they have, simply because it's okay, player 1 attacks, player 2 attacks, player 3 attacks, player 4 attacks a couple times, and then the boss attacks once. Player 1 attacks, player 2 attacks,
right.
and so on. So in 5th edition, what they did to alleviate that is that every, like, quote-unquote boss type monster is going to have actions that it can take when it is not their turn. A lot of the times this is going to be they can make this one attack, or they can move, or they can do this other attack that's kind of dependent on something else. They might also have lair actions, which happen when you fight them in their lair. So,
right.
if you're fighting a red dragon, like an adult red dragon in its lair, it isn't going to have lair actions, but the encounter is going to have lair actions. So you might be inside a volcano fighting this red dragon, and then every once per round, one of the players gets hit by like a blast of hot air, shoots out of a crack in the ground.
Whoa.
Or something like that. And so again, these are all just to keep the enemy relevant even when it's not their turn.
Sure. Yeah.
So you might want to try and give, if you're not playing 5th edition, you're playing like Pathfinder or an earlier edition of D&D, you might want to give your end boss some sort of thing that they can do when it's not their turn, just to make sure that it's not the entire party goes and then one attack. The entire party goes and then one attack.
Yeah.
In the Age of Worms, the way that the encounter is set up, because it is all about just that one big fight with the boss, but at the same time, there's a lot of other stuff you can do before that. So, small spoilers for Age of Worms. It's all about this ancient god trying to regain the power that he once had. Like he became a god and then he got like exiled or he got destroyed or something, and he's been slowly piecing himself back together. And as part of the final adventure, you find out where the boss is. He's on top of this big tower that may or may not get teleported to a random plane during the fight.
Sure.
And then
Whoops.
There's a whole bunch of little smaller adventures you can do on the way to try and reduce his power, because he's still regaining the last of his power. So you can like go and stop this big eldritch machine that's fueling him with, arcane energy. You can go and you can stop some of his minions that are going to try and bolster his power during the fight and stuff like that. So the adventure isn't just a fight with the boss. The adventure is doing all the stuff to let you fight the boss.
Yeah.
Now, again, when I was running this for you guys, you guys were really powerful, and you were a lot more powerful than the adventure expected. So I had you guys do all of the little small things to weaken him, but when the encounter happened, I didn't actually reduce his power the way that the adventure suggested. I still had him be at the full power listed. Another thing that I want to recommend that I did for that encounter is you probably want to just kind of ignore the hit points.
Sure.
And just let the fight go on for as long as you think will make the fight memorable.
Yeah. You don't want your players dying too quickly, and you don't want the boss dying too quickly.
Right. You don't want for the players to get in there and then they go supernova on him and kill him in one round.
Right.
That would be pretty anticlimactic.
Yep.
At the same time, if it's a long drawn out fight and the players are slowly getting picked off one by one, they're still doing damage against the boss. They're still beating him down. But then the boss has like 100 hit points left and one player is left alive, and he does his like last attack and he crits, and you're thinking, yes, they're going to take down the boss. But then he like rolls low damage, and then, oh, the boss still has 50 hit points left and the boss is surely going to kill the last player. Maybe just have the boss die at that point.
Sure. That
would make a much more memorable encounter. Sure, it's probably memorable if, oh, you guys fought against the boss and he kills you and then he takes over the world and it's all over.
Yeah.
I guess that could be memorable. That is a legitimate end to the campaign.
Right, yep.
But maybe just, play ball with the players a little bit and let the players feel like they had a victory. And just knock off those last 50 hit points or whatever.
That's something I think we talked about at one point, where it's like losing a campaign, the end of a campaign where the players lose.
Yeah.
Where it's like, that is the end of the campaign. That's all, everybody's dead. And it was like the big bad did the ritual or whatever, and the world is over.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, that is, if that's something that you are thinking about being a possibility, just be prepared for that to be something that might happen.
Yeah.
In which case, maybe you could have the next campaign. I think when we talked about this before, the next campaign is you're in this hellscape. Now you have to try and gain power and then rise up and save the world again.
Yeah, like the bad guy became this like dictator or this tyrant or something like that, and like brought demons to the material plane, and so like now you just live in your next campaign is you live in this world where there's demons everywhere and they kind of terrorize the place, but you're trying to keep moving, and and then you find out that there was a time before this that there wasn't demons, and the overlord wasn't like being a jerk,
right?
So you have to go on an adventure to try and find a way to stop him.
Yeah, so that can be if you are prepared for the possibility of your players dying during the fight against the big bad, that's fine. But again, even in that case, try and make it so the players so that it feels like something cool that's happening. Don't just have it be, oh, whoops, the boss rolled high enough and killed you. Yeah. Okay. I guess that's the end of the campaign, guys. See you next week. Like if you are planning for that to be a possibility, have there be some sort of like big thing that happens when the boss starts gaining the upper hand, and make it clear to the players through the boss's power that like, oh no, he's just getting started and you don't think that you can do this, but then maybe the characters are still going to keep fighting because that's what they would not just let it happen.
Right, yeah.
They would, still go down fighting.
Yeah.
The whole thing is that you want the final boss to be memorable, for better or for worse. I mean, I guess you don't want it to be like the thing that nobody liked happening. But you want, whether the outcome is good or bad, you want it to be good, memorable. You want the players to have fond memories of that time that the world got destroyed because the boss succeeded in his thing, or that the boss was about to succeed and then the players managed to get the upper hand and killed him.
Right. Yeah.
So yeah, if you have to fudge the rules, I would say that the final boss of a campaign is the time to do it.
Sure. Yeah.
Just try and read the room. If one of your players is a real stickler for the rules and he is not going to enjoy it, if he feels like they won because you fudge the rules, then maybe don't do it.
Yeah.
In that case, maybe you shouldn't do it. But in any other case, I would say like that's the time to make the players feel like they did something really awesome, even if the rules don't necessarily line up with it.
Sure.
Another thing that I would recommend is don't just have, if the players beat the final boss, don't just have it be, okay, yeah, you did enough damage, he's dead. Here's, you guys get 12,000 experience. All right, cool, see you guys next week. Don't do that. When I was doing the Age of Worms, I had you guys fight the boss, and then I tried having, after you guys had finally, I kind of just ignored hit points and I just let it go for as long as I felt the encounter needed to be. But once I felt like the battle had gotten to a good end, I then sort of narrated a little like final round of combat saying what each of your characters did. Like, okay, Steve's character brought his axe down on the boss and like, split him entirely in half. And then he was this giant mass of green worms. So the green worms, like they scatter into this big puddle on the ground. And then Jeff, your character comes up, you raise both your hands in this, this blast of energy and you shoot it. And then you blast them all and they're all covered in this arcane energy and they're starting to disintegrate. And then Jay's character had like this cool thing he could do with his swords where he would like clang his swords together to make this giant attack. And so then like you guys both stand behind Jay's character as he raises the two swords and he slams them together. And then this blast of sonic energy completely vaporizes all of the remaining worms and the god Kyus is dead. Or something, something like that.
Or, something like that.
Yeah, something like that. And then you guys realize, oh, wait, we're not on the material plane anymore.
Right.
Hey, look, it's those guys from before.
It's like, hey, that's that lost ancient civilization. There they are right
there. What are the odds?
How did that happen?
Exactly. And so, however you're going to have the battle go, you want to make sure that when it ends, it's not anticlimactic. You want to make sure that the players, like there's some big cool cutscene that happens.
Sure.
Now, again, read the room. If your players have voiced disinterest in when video games do stuff like that, maybe don't do it. But most of the time, I think most players are going to enjoy hearing that their character does something cool.
Yeah, sure.
You know? As far as making a final boss, because the example that I gave, Kyos was made by the makers of that adventure path.
Yeah.
He was part of Greyhawk. He was one of the Greyhawk deities for, I don't know, decades or something like that. But if you're making the final boss, if you're making your own campaign or just making the final adventure and you're like, okay, I want to come up with a good NPC or a good monster that's going to be the final boss, I would recommend trying to incorporate the final boss somehow into the players' backstories and or the players' goals. It's one thing if, well, we got to kill this monster because it's there.
Yeah.
Or, well, we got to kill the Tarask because, we've been, it's terrorizing the countryside and we're about 20th level. So this might as well be our last adventure.
We're first level tiefling clerics with wings.
Right. So it's one thing to build just a boss that happens to be the final boss of a campaign. That's fine. But if possible, try to have the final adventure revolve around resolving either one or more players' backstories or one or more players' goals. If there is one of the players, his parents were killed by orcs, have the final adventure revolve around stopping the guy who originally set the orcs on that rampage or something. Don't try to have it be too convoluted. Don't try to have it be like a Spider-Man 3 scenario where it's like, well, we got to have Sandman in there. We've got to make the viewers care about whether Spider-Man beats Sandman or not. Let's say he was the one who killed Uncle Ben or something. I don't know. Let's say whatever. He also was responsible for Krypton getting destroyed. I didn't make that up either. I'm stealing everybody's jokes today. So you don't want to get too ridiculous with it, but again, this is going to be the big thing at the end. Everybody is going to be hoping that this is a big, memorable thing. So try and have the final adventure, the final encounter be with something that is important to the players.
Yeah, make it personal.
Right. When in the Ichi campaign, when we were doing our final adventure, that adventure was a published adventure. And to be fair, it didn't directly have any connection to the rest of the players. But Melissa, the DM of that adventure, she still tried to tie in at least a couple of the characters' backstories into the adventure. For example, Chris.
Dang.
Chris, his character ended up being part of this cabal or descended from this cabal of spellcasters who originally tried to stop this giant red dragon, I think. It's been a long time. This was a long time ago. So somehow or another, Chris's character was directly related to the conflict of this adventure. And as a result, when we got to the final boss, Chris's character realized he had amnesia or something like that. He had this momentary thing wash over him, and then he realized his memory came back, and he shouted a challenge at the evil red dragon, and then gained all of this power from it. It was actually kind of convoluted. It turned out that his character, who was a half dragon human sorcerer,
oh boy,
turned out to actually be a human sorcerer and a dragon who had fused together.
Oh boy.
Previously. So during the final fight, he said this thing, and then he split into two characters, a female human sorcerer and this dragon, and then he could ride the dragon or whatever. It was kind of cool when it happened, but looking back, it was a little ridiculous.
Whatever. As long as everybody has fun.
Right. You want to make sure that the players feel like they're doing something important.
Yeah.
If the final boss is just another mook that happens to have higher stats than everybody else,
yep,
that's not going to be as memorable as if it's oh, that's the dragon that's been devouring unborn babies' souls for the last 100 years, which was the actual backstory for that adventure.
Oh, okay.
I was just talking about. So you want to make sure that the scope you don't want to make the scope too big, because then what are you going to do next campaign? Make it even bigger, whatever. But you want it to be big enough that the players feel like what they're doing is important enough for it to be the end of the campaign.
Yeah. I mean, it's kind of risky. You might risk making things seem scripted with it. But there are some cool things that you can do, and some of them don't necessarily involve them just killing a big bad guy.
Sure.
Makes me think, I had thought that made me think of the second Force Unleashed video game.
Okay.
Which is like it's not canon to Star Wars that I know of. Gosh. But basically the end of that game is pretty much the very beginning of like the rebellion.
Okay.
And so like the main character dies probably, but he died probably in the first game, but then came back anyway.
Sure.
But yeah, so the main character is dead, or was stopped or defeated or something like that. But this rebellion happened,
Sure, sure.
and that kind of continued on. So like you could have a last battle where the players do die, but they have made enough connections with other NPCs and stuff like that to where they've done enough damage to the bad guy, or maybe like destroyed something. Like they couldn't kill him, but they at least destroyed his like magical artifact or whatever that he was using.
Yeah.
So like he's still gonna be powerful and take over the world for the most part, but the whoever's left is gonna have a chance.
Yeah, it's not going to wipe out everybody.
Yeah,
It's going to wipe out a lot of people, but there's still enough for them to someday come back.
right. Yeah, or you have to escape, but you manage to escape and like take something with you, or you basically escape and form a resistance or something of that sort. Thinking back on like Star Wars and stuff.
Yeah.
But yeah, it doesn't have to end in it doesn't have to end in the players killing a bad guy. It can, there's plenty of other ways to end a campaign.
Sure. And just one thing that I do want to advise against is if you are, I said kind of disregard the rules for some stuff. You might be tempted to try and have the final encounter be something other than combat. I mean, that's fine. That's fine if you want to have it be something other than combat. Try not to make it anything that skews too far from a typical adventure, though, because you don't want to run into like video game types where the final boss is a completely different type of control as the rest of the game.
Right, yeah.
Like Star Fox Adventures, which, to be fair, was a horrible game. Or the first Devil May Cry, the final boss is like, starts out as like a shooter.
Sure, yeah. Well, yeah, you don't want to switch genres like out for the final boss. And there's so many video games that do that. Like that happens so often.
Yeah.
And like either it'll switch genres and like as far as the mechanics go, and like you're just like, okay, this game where I spent my entire time on foot, I'm suddenly flying a ship. Like, what's going on?
Yeah.
And like all the controls are completely different. I have to learn a whole new thing, and that's the quote unquote difficulty. Like it's like, oh, this is a really hard final boss, but really it's just they throw a different game at me suddenly.
Yeah.
Or it could change just things like JRPGs where like you're fighting antagonists and fighting against bosses and things like that, and then suddenly you get to the final boss and you're in a vacuum.
You're out in a void somewhere.
You're out in a void and you're fighting like the spirit of death. That like
Fantasy 9. Oh, excuse me.
That like
I usually edit those out. Why didn't I do that this time?
It's like it had no like real connection to the players at any other point. In the story.
Yeah, I have heard a fan theory that makes sense of that, but in the game, no, it does not make any sense.
So yeah, don't change things too much.
Yeah.
For the boss battle.
Right.
All right.
Okay. Well, I think that'll do it for questions for today.
Yeah.
I guess let's take a moment. Let's take a deep breath. Let's remember the noble fighters who have fought against that final boss and died.
Oh no.
Let's
Well,
think about those. Think about those. Those disappointing encounters as we toss another log onto the funeral pyre. For this one, I mean, this very well may have been a final encounter.
Oh yeah.
This one is from Chris via Facebook, and I'm editing this slightly just because to make it a little more pleasing to the ears. This was a fight with the 2nd edition Tarrasque.
Ooh.
This unnamed character was being eaten by the Tarrasque and decided to try to cast Chain Lightning.
Oh, no.
in hopes of incapacitating the Tarrasque from the inside, I guess. So they cast this spell, and then the DM noticed that the Tarrasque, as we talked about, has this reflective carapace that reflects spells back at the caster. So when he cast Chain Lightning while being eaten by the Tarrasque, rather than killing the Tarrasque, caused the spell to chain back at the caster, and back at the caster, and back at the caster, over and over and over again while it was going down the Tarrasque's gullet.
Oh, no.
So this unnamed caster died battered, torn, electrocuted, and crushed because then the Tarrasque fell on them.
Oh, jeez.
So let's raise a glass in memory of this unnamed caster who I don't know, just had a bad day.
They had a really bad day.
Yes. Clink. All right. To submit questions for us to discuss, items for the Dragon's Hoard, or stories for the Funeral Pyre, please email us at interpartyconflict@gmail.com. For show notes, a running list of questions asked, and important links, go to interpartyconflict.com. Find us on Facebook, facebook.com/interpartyconflict, or our subreddit at reddit.com/r/interpartyconflict, where I post weekly discussion questions for you. We're also on Twitter at InPartyConflict. We're on iTunes, Google Play Music, Stitcher, YouTube, anywhere you download podcasts. Please leave us a rating, a review, or just subscribe or tell a friend. If you feel like donating, we have a PayPal donate button on our website. Anything you can give us would go towards making the show better. Jeff, you want to tell us about FriendQuest again?
FriendQuest is our YouTube channel. We got games that we play sometimes, and we're probably going to put a few up sooner than later. So
Sure.
So give that a look.
Sure. All right. You can head over to audibletrial.com/conflict and get yourself a free audiobook. There's over 180,000 titles to choose from. I guarantee you'll find something you like 100% for free. Also, take our short survey at bit.ly/interpartyconflict. Takes about 5 minutes, maybe not even that. And if you take it, you get 2 free printable board games, courtesy of Mary and Tom at hollandspiel.com. And our music is made by Boxcat Games from Nameless the Hackers RPG. So, Jeff, till next time.
Don't get eaten by the Tarrasque. It's not a good time.
Good advice for anybody.